that is to welcome Mich Atagana, who is the Head of Communications and Public Affairs at Google South Africa. And she'll be really plowing into what empowering women in the digital age really means for us at present. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mich Atagana.
Hello. Thank you. That's what I like to see. See, I'm Nigerian. We like extra, so you gotta get extra on me. Thank you so much, Standard Bank Topco, for having me here today. I was asked to talk a little bit about what it actually means to empower women in the digital age. And I want to look at this in three ways. I will talk about it from an industry point of view, so when we look at business and how we grow business, and Shola's already talked a little bit about the importance of that and women being part of that. I will talk as well about the technologies itself that we use on a day-to-day basis. How many of you have mobile phones? How many of you have at least 30 apps on those devices? That's very little amount, by the way. Like on average, people have about 100 apps on their phones. And I'll talk about it socially in terms of how we exist in the world of technology on different platforms as well. I grew up in a little town in the Delta in Nigeria that no one knows. And when I was a kid, I was a scrawny little kid, super shy. And I used to sit in class in primary school and stare out the window waiting for the tuck shop lady to come so I know it was lunchtime. And every time I did that, I would just stare out. I was very quiet, and I love staring into space. It really is one of my favorite things to do. So if you're trying to talk to me and I'm staring into space, don't be offended. I really can't perceive you. I don't know you're there. And all the boys used to bully me all the time because of that, and they would call me really mean names. And I was super scrawny. I wouldn't say anything about it. And one of the days, my sister witnessed this happening. And she said to me, why don't you stand up to them and ask them why they're doing that? And I said to her, no, it's fine. I mean, it's just school, right? It'll be over soon. I'll move on with my life. One day, they'll be working for me. They probably will. And this kept happening. And eventually, she told my mom about it, which really upset my mom. So eventually, I had to stand up to the bullies. So what did I do? The next time they bullied me, I pushed them. Not the best solution for a scrawny little girl with a burly boy. So we can all end up how that got happened. I got beaten up, and I cried a lot. And when I think about digital and the world we exist in, especially on social platforms, we have taken those clouds of old ideas of bullying into that world, where women are constantly targeted on social media by people who can hide behind their social identities, who can sit in their homes and say whatever they want. And because of this, we find that the experience of women online is not as great as other people. You have people who think they have the right to tell you how your life should be lived. People who think they have the audacity to give you instructions on how to be better without context and without truly knowing your experience. I tweeted a photo at a friend's wedding in Lagos, and I got a bunch of DMs telling me, this outfit is nice, but it would be so much better if you weren't so fat and your cleavage wasn't showing. And I thought about that for a second, and I thought I should respond and kind of be my typical self and just be like, how dare you? But then I realized that that would be me talking to one person who ignorance is based on old ideas and societal norms that we have not really changed in the digital age. Because when people bully you in a closed space, you can defend yourself, you can talk to them properly. But when they come at you en masse online, it's harder to fight back, right? It's more difficult. You don't have the tools to do that. So when I look at, and I work for a company that has a digital platform, we own YouTube, and the comment section on YouTube is not great. It's not. Some of the things say on there are vile. And we are trying our best to make sure that we do not perpetuate this kind of behavior. Platforms like Google, like Twitter, like Facebook and Instagram need to be better at making sure that when people engage on their platform in a manner like that, that they take a stand and say, enough is enough. You cannot treat people this way, and it is not okay. And all of us in this room need to jump in those threads, in those comments, and support one another. Because standing idly by while someone else gets bullied out of context, actually, why people get bullied, period, it's not okay. So how do we do that? There should be, the same way there are rules to the way you use those platforms in terms of your terms of use. So if you post hateful content, if you post explicit content, that content gets taken down, the same should apply to the comments that you post. You should be able to flag comments, and platforms need to immediately handle those comments and say, okay, this person has flagged this. Real human beings, not just machines, look at it and go, yep, we're going to take this down because it is not okay. If you walk into a bank or any kind of corporate place and you start hurling insults at people, what's going to happen? Security is going to escort you out the door. So in the same way, we should digitally escort people out the door when they behave that way. Empowerment should be that we all feel empowered to stand up for what we believe in a digital space like that. But that's one aspect, and that's one small aspect to making women safe and empowered online. We build technologies that are built by men. Half of the apps you use are built by men. Where are the apps that women are building that are thinking about the way women use technology, that are actively thinking about how this technology is affecting the way people behave? We need to create more inclusion in the way that we build the technologies that are being used by more than half the population of the world. If you are creating technology that is specifically built to think about the male mindset, you are going to leave out half your spending population. I mean, we just found out that women spend more money. They control the purse strings anyway. So if you want to make money, you really should be including women in the way you build your technologies. We see a lot of this talk, and I'm sure somebody will talk about STEM at some point in the next 2 days. We talk a lot about how do we get more women to study coding, how do we get more women interested in mathematics and education. Maybe if the people they see teaching that subject looks like them, perhaps they'll feel much more comfortable in being in those classrooms. I know I would have been way more comfortable if when I walked into Computer Science 101 at UKZN, that if my lecturer was a woman, it would have been way better than me sitting in a sea of 100 guys and 3 women and a male teacher. I would have felt way more comfortable in learning something that terrified me, something that I felt I didn't have the logical thought processes to handle because it was a lot of numbers, and I'd never really been good at numbers. But guess what? You don't actually have to really know math to know how to code. You don't. People are teaching themselves these things every day. They're creating new ways for kids to learn without even looking at mathematical solutions. So how do we get more women in a position to teach these subjects so that young girls feel that it is their place to be in those classrooms? And by doing that, we will find that more of the technologies we build are being built to be far more inclusive than the technologies we have today. And there's a lot of opportunity to do this, and the world is starting to kind of catch on to the fact that, wait a second, it makes business sense to bring women into the workforce in a really powerful way. I was sitting when Sola came up to talk, and she was talking about what she did. I said to a friend sitting next to me, when I grow up, I want to be her, because I want to control 80 markets in Africa. That's my dream right there. So Sola, I'm going to come talk to you after, but yeah. When we look at how many female CEOs in technology do you know? If you know one, put your hand up. Okay, if you know anywhere from 5 to 10, hand up. Okay, 20? 30? I just finished reading a book called Bad Blood about a Silicon Valley's female CEO, a company called Theranos. Anyone heard about it? Of course, you've all heard of Theranos. You're watching HBO. Theranos, when Theranos launched, I was a journalist at the time. I was so excited. This was the first female Silicon Valley CEO to have a unicorn company. A unicorn company is a company that has a valuation of over $1 billion. At the time, very few companies in Silicon Valley even had that. It was Google, Facebook, Uber, and a couple others. $1 billion founded by a woman. I mean, we were all Team Theranos. Then things didn't go quite well. Then it came out that the product that they actually built wasn't really real and that they overinflated their valuation, and now she's facing charges for wire fraud and a bunch of other things. But nobody looked super closely because for the first time, there was a female CEO in the unicorn club of Silicon Valley. And it is so sad that the first female CEO in the unicorn club turned out to not be legit. And I am terrified that that is going to create an issue when it comes to other female CEOs that are coming up. Because we're so desperate to find a female messiah that we've decided to not be critical in the way we champion women. And we must be critical in the way we champion women. I know it's not a popular thing to say, but we have to be, because it's important for the young girls that come after to know that when you are a woman that builds a business, you build a business of value. You build a business that supports and a business that scales. And that those three things are incredibly important because all those three things are driven by true passion. True passion to change the world, true passion to make the world a much more inclusive place. So we need to think about how it is that we can encourage more young women to found companies that can be in that unicorn club. In Africa, I call it a black rhino because they're almost extinct. Because, I mean, guys, who knows what a unicorn is out here? Let's calm down. There are some amazing companies that have been built by women in Africa already. Sweep South is a favorite company of mine. I use their product, founded by Asha Pandor. There's a company that just is part of our program that we do for entrepreneurs called Launchpad, called Quara, based out in Kenya, that I really like what they're doing as well. And my favorite female tech entrepreneur in Africa is a woman named Rebecca, Africa Techie on Twitter, for those of you on Twitter, who has been championing this movement for such a long time, building strong technological solutions for Africa. It can be done, but why are we not doing it? Why is it that most tech companies we see come out of Africa want women to be their, the person who manages their social media or the person who's helping them figure out how to do marketing? Not that those roles are not important, but they are technical women, and we need to have technical founders in companies to stand up, because if we are to achieve gender parity, this is important, and we really must take it seriously. Earlier, so the third thing I said I'll talk about is industry. Earlier, we saw a slide that asked how many companies were funded for women, and we saw a statistic in the US, it was 2%, and now it was 3%, now it's 22%. Whoopee-doo for the US, a whole 22%. Good for you. In Africa, that number is way less. Doors are closed to women when it comes to funding. I used to be a tech journalist, and my job was to cover the entrepreneurship landscape of Africa and how African companies were trying to solve problems as well as get funding for their businesses. Guess what? It hasn't changed much in Africa. If someone gives you a stat in Africa going, well, we've seen growth of 50%, that just means 2 more people joined the ecosystem. We've not seen real growth in African companies funding female tech entrepreneurs. We haven't seen real growth in investors truly believing that women can lead companies, because Africa is a patriarchal continent and we still are shackled by the thoughts of old. We're so convinced that the world of business is a man's world that we're willing to lose money for it, which is stupid. Because seriously, you would make more money, the stats prove it. So how do we begin to create investment opportunity to help build a tech industry in Africa that is so useful for women and inclusive, which in the end makes it very useful for everybody in the long run? What I would love to see is tech funds that are specific for women entrepreneurs. Tech funds that look at solutions that are being built by technical founders, teams investors, when they meet entrepreneurs, they shouldn't invest in that company if they do not have a diverse leadership. They shouldn't. If you are investing in 4 men, you should think about it. You should think about diverse leadership both from a gender and a representative point of view, because it is with diverse ideas that real business growth happens. I don't think Standard Bank is 100 and something years old because they had the same people running things for those many years. They thought about diversity, they thought about their leadership and how they would grow it. So we need to actively start thinking about these things. How do we create specific funds to help grow female businesses, female tech businesses? How do we make sure that the technologies being built are also being built by women, that the apps you use on your phone, that, heck, the phone itself is the product of a woman's thought? And how do we make sure that socially the digital space is safe, psychologically safe for women to participate in? So if we can figure out a way to answer these 3 questions, I think we're golden. I don't have the answers. I hope someone in this room does. That would be nice if they do. I would love to chat more with people if you have some answers to this. And it's something that actively we are thinking about as a company from a Google point of view. How do we make sure our organization itself is very inclusive? We are not there yet. I can tell you that. It is a journey. And also, how do we make sure that the products we're building, that our engineers, our female engineers are taking lead on projects and building products? And how do we include more women in our entrepreneurship program? Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful conference.